Good morning, everyone. I want to thank, frankly, the press for being here this morning, because getting information out to New Mexicans is critical, particularly when we're tackling one of the toughest challenges facing this city, this state, and frankly, the entire nation. And when you have a really difficult challenge in public safety and preventing crime and protecting every single New Mexican, you bring the best and the brightest together, and we diligently, in a bipartisan, nonpartisan fashion, work to do everything we can about the incredible public safety issues that require immediate attention. You might also wonder why here. Well, for me, it's two reasons. One, for every time we talk about a violent crime, a homicide, any crime or public safety at all, there's a New Mexican who was the victim. There is a family who is suffering or grieving or angry or frustrated. And we're here because we're in front of a mural painted by or commissioned by New Mexicans Against Gun Violence, or New Mexicans to Prevent Gun Violence, to make sure that we're clear that this is about protecting our families, this is about protecting our communities, and we have real losses here that must be identified, recognized, and we have to make sure that those families are clear that we're going to do everything in our power to make a difference and to hold criminals accountable and to prevent that. So if you're asking if this is a tough on crime press announcement, make no mistake, it's a tough on and prevent crime press conference with New Mexico's leaders, particularly in that space. Two, this community, any community that has had issues in either poverty or investments or growth strategies, any of it, are often areas that have higher risks for the individuals who live and work in them. And I think it's also critical that we talk about that this is not just an Albuquerque issue. This is a state issue. This is a neighborhood by neighborhood, community by community issue. New Mexico can and will do better. So first I'm going to talk about the 4 things that we are introducing and will be addressed in this 30-day session in our public safety effort and our tough on crime stance to protect every single New Mexican. The first is something that I think many people have been talking about and hearing about, and that is to deal with how not only New Mexico but the country addressed its constitutional responsibility to protect individuals who are arrested for a crime but are not able to bail out because of their income status. So the issue became that if you're higher income, you're out. If you're lower income, you can't bail out and you're in jail until you have your trial. The issue today is that we'd like to change the presumption for violent crimes. If you've committed a violent crime, the burden is on you to demonstrate why it would be safe to have you go back into the community. That creates an opportunity for us to be clear, for the judicial branch to have a statutory requirement. You'll hear from the district attorney, who in fact was talking about yesterday someone who should not have been released in his opinion that then committed additional crimes. This puts a wedge in this revolving door. It doesn't minimize our constitutional responsibilities to every single New Mexican, irrespective of their income, but it also makes really clear that the constitutional right to be safe in your home and communities is also an area that we must maintain and do something significant about. 2 and 3 are 2 criminal enhancement pieces of legislation that you will hear more about from the speakers. 1, for second-degree murder, increases jail time. The issue is we want to make sure that folks who are thinking about, who did, who are engaged, who are recruited in any activity that puts them in a position to commit a homicide and violent crime, you're going to jail for a very, very long time. We need to stop that revolving door, and we need to stop putting individuals and criminals in a position where they're assessing risk. Our risk is what is important today, and we're going to make that really clear. The second, given the increasing amount of gun violence in our state and in our communities, if you are in possession of a firearm, if you are committing a crime, if you are brandishing a firearm, that can no longer, if you want any really hard questions, they're right on my piece of paper. So I encourage you to get that, oh, too late, as quick as you can. Thank you. If you're engaging in criminal activity with a firearm, it's a felony. Very simple. All right? Too often, these are misdemeanors, particularly for first-time offenders. Not anymore. And we've already done some work there. You'll hear from one of our sponsors, but it's a good place for me to highlight. Representative Ream has successfully already passed legislation, which we have signed and worked together on. And we want to take it a step or two or three or four further. And we're going to keep doing that until we get this right and everyone is safe. 2, 3, 4. We're going to put $100 million into a fund. So we're going to ask the legislature to create an environment where every jurisdiction has access to significant resources when they need them. You can't wait a year for resources to hire police. We can't go to every legislative session. There has to be a meaningful tool so that we're not stealing police officers and law enforcement officers from one jurisdiction to another. We have shortages statewide. This means that we can recruit, retrain, do the right training, and send a signal to everyone in this state, and particularly to our men and women who put on a uniform every day. We need you. We want you. We respect you, and we're going to make sure that you've got the tools necessary to assure that we can keep building a public safety workforce. And that includes all the other men and women who support law enforcement officers, dispatch and administrative staff, without which you've got officers having to do 3 and 4 jobs. So it's not just that we don't have enough law enforcement officers statewide in every jurisdiction. It's that we don't have all of the right human resource tools to make sure that each department can successfully do more about arresting criminals, keeping them in jail, and making sure that they're accountable. And that goes a long way to shore up every other investment we've made to make sure that we're preventing crime. So you have to do all of the above. I am confident that this dream team here, and there are others, are going to get every single one of these bills over the finish line. I am confident that every single leader here representing police officers, public safety officers, is going to work diligently to make sure that their personal stories of dedication and commitment are not minimized by not getting this legislation over the finish line. And while it's a little unfair to some of the other jurisdictions, just given the statewide requirements for state police officers, including our productive partnership and invitation by Albuquerque to provide public safety support here, thank you, Mr. Mayor, means that we need to have the right reimbursements and the right salaries for state police officers. And we're asking the legislature to give them a 19% raise. 19%. It's the largest raise in history, and it's a long time in coming. So with that, I'm going to ask the statewide highest-ranking law enforcement person to come forward and to also talk about the impacts that this will have, and that we have to all be working together to make the changes that we know New Mexicans deserve and that New Mexicans want. And today is the day that we're all going to do it collectively together. I give you our Attorney General Hector Valderas. Thank you.
Thank you. No applause. I want to thank the governor personally for really taking on not only a great initiative, but really putting together a package and really a street fight that victims and families are demanding today. Violence, trauma, it's become normalized in the state of New Mexico. An officer was shot in Farmington, a baby dumped in a dumpster in Hobbs, 3 shootings last night in Albuquerque. This is a statewide epidemic, and I'm really pleased that the governor has assembled a group of legislators, experts, other elected officials, district attorneys, and local law enforcement really to present solutions. I'm going to talk a little bit about it, my lens in the landscape as an attorney general over the last 6 years. In light of the devastating effects of violent crime and other serious offenses that occur all around the state, both in urban and rural communities, places where we'd never thought we would see violent crime, I support the governor's initiatives because these are necessary changes needed to address crime in a very ever-changing world. This not only begins by giving police officers the necessary tools and resources, but it's a game-changing strategy that finally allows officers to do their job safely, effectively, but to increase funding and support and real resources on the ground. As New Mexican families demand policy changes in the legislature, this not only will contribute to immediate relief on the ground, we also understand there is no single reform that is going to change the situation overnight. But this plan targets repeat violent offenders, gun violence, but more importantly places victims and prioritizes families and their voice and the services that need to be provided in the justice system. These families and victims will no longer be silenced and frustrated and re-traumatized in a justice system that is not accountable. I'll be blunt to you. Some of New Mexico's criminal laws are drastically behind the times. For far too long, New Mexico has ranked below the national average in keeping our children safe and our families safe due to stunningly low and ineffective penalties. The inefficiencies are highlighted everywhere. But I'm glad that the governor and courageous lawmakers and community is coming together. But this is a street fight that we're going to take to the legislature and request their leadership in a very important time of need. And this is why I support these bold changes, and I commend the governor here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Attorney General. Thank you. Next, I would like to invite Chief Johnson of the New Mexico State Police to give some remarks. Chief?
That might have just cost me my job once again. I always start off with something. The last time the governor and I were at a press conference, I thought for sure we would never be at another one. So either she forgot or her staff forgot, which in that case they're going to be in for a long day. But I appreciate the opportunity to be here, Governor, along with our representatives and senators from the state. The citizens of this state, and in particular this city, deserve more of me and the people behind me. I've said thousands of times, although the cabinet secretary and the governor approve my share, which is how I get paid, I work and my boss is the citizens of this state. They're crying for more, they're demanding more from us as their leaders, the people they put into office or they appoint. they're demanding more of us, and I believe this is a good step in us being accountable to their demands. The legislation that's being proposed, I've read it. I've had the opportunity to read bills over the last 5 or 6 years. Frankly, not that impressed. But this year, from reading those bills, I do believe those bills will have an impact on the crime in this state, and again, in particular, this city. I did want to be remiss if I didn't discuss the pay raise that the governor has approved or has recommended for us, for the state police, to include a longevity pay package, which may sound selfish or greedy, but I could assure you it is not. It has everything to do with strategy, what we're trying to do. I don't have to tell all of you or the citizens that a lot of law enforcement agencies are down officers at this time. And we have to figure out ways to fill those ranks, because these bills, if enacted into law, are worthless if there's nobody there to enforce them. And we're at a critical mass in law enforcement right now. And I do believe these pay packages, although money isn't everything, I do believe the pay package for the state police is going to be excellent in that we will remain competitive in this state, but more importantly, competitive to our surrounding states, so we can start pulling some folks in from there to come help us solve some of the problems here. But again, I appreciate the opportunity to speak, ma'am, and to be a part of this. And I believe we're a little bit out of order. I think I spoke in front of the mayor, which is awesome. That feels good.
Right behind you.
Yes, we're going by level of importance today, and I'm hitting in the 3-hole. But again, thank you so much, ma'am, and we appreciate this.
I don't really know what to say. Thank you, Chief Johnson. I was starting to go from shortest, sorry, Mr. Attorney General, to tallest. But now it gives me it's a great honor, and with extreme pride, my partner in doing everything we must do to change what's occurring in these communities in this city, and to use that as a model for the issues that we are combating statewide. We also believe these efforts will be a model for the nation that is struggling to enhance its public safety presence and efforts in their communities and states. I give you Mayor Tim Keller.
Well, I want to welcome everyone also back to this location, and it's for a good reason. I want to take everyone back to this summer when our town, like it has been for many years, was fed up with crime. Once again, a call for action. Once again, what are we going to do about it? We talked about a few of these issues several months ago right here at this very place. But today is very, very different. This is a big deal for the city of Albuquerque. This is a sight for sore eyes. This is help on the way. This is what we have been waiting for and what we have needed for many, many years. And so I'm grateful to everyone who's been a part of this. And when we convened this summer for our Metro Crime Initiative, it was based in a couple of truths about New Mexico and also about Albuquerque. Number one is that Albuquerque's crime challenges, unfortunately, are New Mexico's crime challenges for two reasons. One is we know crime, as our Attorney General said and our Governor mentioned, and as the Chief of the State Police knows, is all over the state and is an issue and rising all over the state. But we also know, because of Albuquerque's role, being at the crossroads, having the shopping malls, having the airport, having the hospitals, we are the crossroads of the state of New Mexico. And that also means we're the crossroads for statewide crime in New Mexico. And that's also why we need help from everyone around us. And so part of that Metro Crime Initiative acknowledged that. And it also acknowledged that it's time for our Albuquerque Police Department and for the Mayor's administration to reach out and ask for help from every jurisdiction possible, whether it's our DA's office and what we've been doing together, whether it's legislators from both sides of the aisle who are here today, whether it's our governor, whether it's the state police who've helped on numerous operations. We know we need help in Albuquerque. But we also acknowledge this in the summer with the Metro Crime Initiative. We've each got to step up and do our part. So APD has made a number of changes. We're doing a lot of things different when it comes to investigations with the DA's office. We're doing a lot of things different when it comes to auto theft and working with our statewide partners, when it comes to shoplifting with the Attorney General. But we also know that we need some help from the legislature, and that's what we're so excited about here today. Because back when we convened, and it was actually almost all the entities that you see here that we've been talking about are now here today. Because they're here today not just to talk the talk, but to walk the walk. When I met with the victims of violent crime in our city, most recently, we've met with them over numerous occasions, what they expressed is that they are also tired of no results. We have been talking about this for too long, but this session, for the first time, which is awesome to see, we actually have concrete proposals that will make a difference. And I want to mention one thing about increasing resources around the city of Albuquerque. That is critical. You know, when we don't have, as APD, when we don't have to focus on our surrounding areas, whether it's in the county or whether it's Coors or whether it's the interstate, all of these are areas of cross jurisdiction where historically other units, other agencies, other departments could help with. We've got to get back to that. We have to have a unified metro public safety operation, and we're ready for that. But it can't happen without the governor's initiatives. It can't happen without the legislative initiatives that are coming this session. So I think let me close by talking a little bit just about this revolving door in the criminal justice system. When I met with those victims, they also made it clear, we know that the current system is just not working, and we just have to be clear about that. At this point, it doesn't totally matter why. You have to acknowledge that it is not working. And the question is, what are we going to do about it to fix it? And that is what these initiatives are designed to do. But what's core to this is this notion that on the one hand, we obviously have to maintain constitutional policing, constitutional rights, and we have to prevent the school to prison pipeline. But on the other end, if you use a violent crime, if you shoot at police officers, if you are involved in multiple felonies, you should not be on the street. That's what the compromise is. It's basically saying that if you use a weapon or you're involved in multiple felonies, there is a different standard for you. And our criminal justice system must work to keep those folks from preventing more crimes while they're awaiting trial. That is what I hope we can achieve this session. That is what I'm so grateful for. So thank you, Governor. Thank you, legislators, DA, Attorney General. Thank you for stepping up for Albuquerque. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. All right, I would like to also invite someone who's been an incredible champion of getting all of the policies right, and in doing that, make sure that our offenders have real consequences and that there is a concerted effort to provide the tools to make that straightforward, direct, and meaningful. Again, a wedge in what has been a revolving door. Next is our incredible Bernalillo County District Attorney, Mr. Raul Torres.
Thank you, Governor, and I want to thank the members of the legislature, the Attorney General, and the Mayor for being here. This is an incredible opportunity. I have served as the Bernalillo County District Attorney for the better part of 5 years, and for much of that time, we have been advocating for these proposals. And yet this is the first time that going into a legislative session, we have a real opportunity. And it's an opportunity that we can't waste, because as the other leaders in the criminal justice system and in the legislature have identified, the people of this state, the people of my community are fed up. They are sick and tired of violent crime. They are sick and tired of a criminal justice system that doesn't protect them, that doesn't work on their behalf. But we have an opportunity to fix what is broken in that system. Monday night, a group of families who have lost loved ones to violent crime gathered in my office, as they do on a monthly basis. And part of what they do in those gatherings is to share their experiences inside the criminal justice system, vent their frustrations with the way the system has treated victims, the way the system has frankly failed to hear them. But we hear them now, We are here today because we hear those families. And now it's time to act. Now it's time to honor what has been lost so that we don't have more families gathering in my office to share the story of a lost loved one, of a birthday that will never come, of another family gathering that they will never have. And there are elements in this package that I honestly believe will have a dramatic impact. And I know that because in that meeting on Monday night was the mother of Devin Hayborn, a young man who was shot on the streets of this community by an individual who frankly should not have been on the streets of this community. He was caught with a weapon. He had a criminal history that demonstrated how dangerous he was. He was released. He was placed on GPS monitoring, and he was wearing that ankle monitor when he took Devin Hayborn's life. We can't let that happen again. This is a balanced package, and it is in line with our values as a community. It is narrowly focused and narrowly tailored on the most serious violent offenses that we have on our books. The presumption standard and the proposal that we have advanced will have no impact on nonviolent, low-end offenders and the types of individuals who, as a community, we believe can be safely monitored and provided resources by this community to help get the treatment that they need and get out of the criminal justice. Provide much-needed guidance to the New Mexico judiciary about violent repeat offenders, particularly offenders who use weapons, to sow chaos and violence in our communities. I'm extraordinarily proud of this gathering. I am hopeful for the upcoming session, but I want to make something very clear. We cannot waste this opportunity. The time to act is now, and I trust that with the involvement and leadership of the people gathered here today, that it's the time for change is upon us. So thank you all for being here. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Representing a collective voice, but everyone is here to answer questions. So if you've got specific questions for specific legislators and others, I have no doubt they're willing to engage in that conversation in the question and answer period. But Representative Marion Matthews, who here from Albuquerque, Northeast Heights, is very clear about the dynamic changes that are occurring around public safety and the necessary work to increase the penalties as both a prevention, deterrent, and frankly, as important in that parallel, to send a message that you will be accountable and you will be in jail and out of our communities, making our communities safer. Representative Matthews.
Thank you. Take this off. Thank you, Governor. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. As the mayor indicated, and as our district attorney indicated, there are too many people in our city who are dying or being injured because of the violence that is happening in our city. There's no one cause for the violence, and there's no one solution. And I wish that there was no need for the presumption bill that I am sponsoring in the next legislative session. But we can't ignore that our pretrial detention laws impact the level of violence in the city and in the state when individuals are released who have committed serious violent felonies and then reoffend. Or, and this is important, when individuals feel there is no risk of consequences to them if they commit serious violent felonies. This bill that we'll be introducing asks our courts to look very, very carefully at individuals who are charged with serious violent felonies in deciding whether they should be released pending trial and under what conditions. And also, this bill will send a message to others that there are consequences for committing violent acts. Our criminal justice system needs to serve as a deterrent to criminal behavior, and it's not doing that very effectively right now. Thank you.
All right. We are, all of us, available. I didn't forget anyone, did I, in terms of the speaking lineup? Want to make sure that we've got, acknowledge that we've got the Albuquerque Police Department Chief Medina, who is here. Thank you very much. We've heard from the Chief of the State Police, Chief Johnson. We've got Representative Mo Maestas, who is long been a champion of an all-of-the-above approach to tackling these complicated problems. We've got Majority Leader Martinez. Thank you very much for being here. We heard from the Attorney General. I'm just making sure, the Mayor, the DA, Representative Matthews, and of course, no stranger, given his expertise and background, and somebody who's championed many of these similar proposals, Representative Ream. All right, questions?
I'll take the first question. What's your message to lawmakers who are not on board with these proposals? For example, Senate Judiciary Chairman Senator Joseph Cervantes is on record with us just this week saying he would not favor any bill that enhances prison sentences, and he also doesn't favor the proposal for rebuttable presumption. So for lawmakers who are just not on board at this point, what's your message to them?
Twofold. I mean, those lawmakers need to be prepared to explain to the families and victims of crimes what their strategies are to put a wedge in this revolving door, because I have yet to hear that there is a strategy. Two, we're going to be prepared, and we are. We've done all the other work, and we're going to keep doing that work that we know has to be part of these solutions, right? More investments in education, more community policing, more community schools, more healthcare access, doing something about poverty. All those risk factors we're doing. So the old argument that you have to get upstream, fair, but not in a vacuum. You also have to deal with the climate that you have. And the climate that we have is pure and simple unacceptable. And so I think that message is going to get across to those senators. And I'm inviting every New Mexican who's as fed up and as tired as we are about what is occurring in our state, in our communities and neighborhoods, to reach out to Senator Cervantes and others and really talk to them about the impact that we believe and they believe that this is going to make. And I think we will persuade them, but it's tough.
As a quick follow-up,
Yep.
do you see your office engaging with Senator Cervantes and others to also persuade them to go in line with what you're thinking?
Absolutely. I mean, we have made these statements before. I'll make them again. That while we are independent branches of government, all of us are represented here today, don't always agree on a mechanism or a strategy or an idea, but we work pretty damn well together and always have. And at the end of every legislative session, these folks will tell you that the vast majority, 95% of the proposals that we ask for, including the really tough stuff, we get over the finish line. I don't suggest, and I don't think Representative Matthews suggests that any of this work is easy. If it was easy, it would be done all over the country. And this is a debate that's raging, right? Bail reform, pretrial detention. You got to get it right. You have to get it right. Someone is harmed if you don't get it right. And today, we think this is that narrow, effective, violent offenders should not be released back into our community. Serious, significant repeat offenders should not be released into our community. Narrow enough, effective enough, we expect to win. You're correct, Chris. There are lots of work to do in the 30-day session, and we'll be very involved in working diligently with our communities of interest to make sure this bill gets across the finish line.
Governor, I have a question. Are you talking about retooling the Arnold tool? Because a lot of times we'll sit in hearings and people who are charged with felonies, that doesn't count. It only counts if they're convicted with the Arnold tool. So we're talking about revamping that.
And I'd love for other folks to step forward, because I don't want to, really easy for me just to sort of lean in and stand here and not let anybody else in. The tool that Nancy's talking about is to the Supreme Court and others, including the DAs and the Attorney General and others, really work to provide a little bit of clarity because it was becoming tough about what one jurisdiction was doing versus another jurisdiction. The issue here now is we're very clear about the felony, the violent offenses. Those have the rebuttable presumption. It's up to the person who committed the criminal act to convince all of us, including the judge, that they can be safely released. It shifts that burden. Today, the burden is on the judge to defend that they're not doing a release, and the DA to have basically, a whole evidentiary proceeding on just that issue. So we're shifting that burden. And I think that tool can readily be revised, but having statutory clarity. I mean, that's what the DAs and judges and PDs do. This is what the law says. No wiggle room when there's clarity about what the law says. So I'm not concerned really about that. I don't know if the DA wants to speak to that or the AG or anyone else, but I think that having a statutory component that makes it very clear, if you're a violent offender, the presumption is that you stay in jail pending your trial. And if it is one of the offenses that we've mentioned, brandishing a firearm, second-degree murder, if convicted, you're staying in prison a lot longer. And those aspects, we think, will really make a difference in the areas that we know are the highest risk and are just completely unacceptable for our state and communities. Do you want to add anything? All right. Thank you.
So the Arnold risk assessment tool that's used in Bernalillo County would not be affected by the passage of a rebuttable presumption statute that we've proposed. I have been on record as objecting to the way in which the Arnold tool was implemented in this community, specifically the failure to adopt a supplemental framework that has been adopted in New Jersey and in other jurisdictions across the country that actually use effectively the Arnold risk assessment tool. But that is an issue that has to be taken up by the judiciary itself. The judiciary controls what tools are deployed, how they're tested, and how they're implemented. I think there's a place for that kind of objective tool to be used inside the criminal justice system. I think, though, that we have to be very careful about how it's implemented. This does something different, however. This resets the framework to a position and signals to judges unequivocally. If this is an individual who's charged with a serious violent felony, or someone who has been recently convicted of a serious violent felony, if they brandished or discharged a firearm, the presumption should be that that individual should remain in custody. It does not, and this is important, it does not result in an automatic detention. There are procedural safeguards, and this proposal tracks very closely with the 1984 Bail Reform Act, which has been effectively used in federal court for nearly 40 years. There's an established body of case law for our judges and our judiciary to draw upon. I would imagine there will be, in the course of the debate over this bill, a deep discussion about how this works, what the burdens are, and what standards of proof are going to be involved. But we're not starting from scratch. We have models to go on. We also have a model, for example, in the state of California, which adopted similar standards to make sure that violent repeat offenders stayed in custody. Does that answer your question?
All right. Any others? Yes, ma'am. Look, changing human behavior and how we respect and treat each other is a very difficult effort. Certainly, I've been talking about that for far too long, about how we get folks to care about each other and respect each other in the context of a pandemic. You can talk to any medical professional, behavioral health professional, that talks about values and respecting each other and your families in your treatment course. But if you don't have guardrails, you are also signaling that it's everyone for themselves, and we aren't going to do anything collectively that we know can have an impact. You have to lead by example and set the standards that this is intolerable what is occurring. And quite frankly, both legislative aspects and working together actually does show real results. And I don't want to diminish violent crime. I mean, this is an effort to get at the most serious issues that we are grappling with. But when we are all working together, and we still are, we saw a 42% decrease in auto theft. When we created the Fugitive Apprehension Unit, the state police every year with their local jurisdiction partners are responsible for the arrests of more than 400 additional individuals. Their presence in Albuquerque, 35 now, 50 before, also results in many felony arrests and well more than 1,000. I think 1,573 in the last data point last year. It makes a difference. You have to have the resources, the tools, and a strategy. We're going to keep doing that. And we've done a bunch of this work, and it has paid off, but it's not enough. And until it stops, and until it's safer, we're going to keep doing it. That's our obligation as policymakers, and it's our obligation as leaders, and it's our obligation to the people of New Mexico who have said enough. Anyone else?
Yeah, Governor, one of the most interesting arguments against this that I've heard from people is that the deterrent to crime is successful prosecution, and that it's maybe more money to the court system, be that prosecutors or public defenders or something like that. That it's not sort of a pretrial detention thing. It's showing people that if they commit a crime, they're going to get locked up, and there's a serious consequence for it. What in this package sort of gets at that?
Well, certainly the two criminal penalty enhancements, right? For second-degree murder, we add 3 years, and we make sure that it's a felony and second-degree felony. And if you're brandishing a firearm, I mean, really getting at that weapons are part of the problem here. Frankly, explicitly, they are the problem. That no misdemeanors in that context, they're felonies, and you're going to do jail time. Those really do have an impact. If you know that you're going to A, be released, and B, that it's a misdemeanor, or it's a fourth-degree felony, the lowest felony, with minimal jail time, there's no real risk for you engaging in this criminal activity. The signal here is, there is risk to you. You're a risk to us, and we aren't going to tolerate it anymore. And while if it's just criminal enhancements, or it's just working on the judiciary, it's not dealing with the economy and education and training and community policing and respecting our neighborhoods. And we just keep doing this pendulum swing, one thing to another. I think in large part that has also led to the environment all of us are facing here and around the nation. This is a state that's doing all of the above in a much more directed and evidence-based context. You know, we've got data. UNM did research showing how many folks that have been released actually commit another crime. So we know that that can, right, that wedge, pretrial detention and that revolving door will in fact make people safer, particularly if we're doing it well. To your point about the judiciary. Look, the judiciary, I don't get to say, this is what I propose for the judiciary in terms of building and investing in the judiciary. That they have a very robust proposal of their own to get right at your point. And I believe that this legislature is clear. They have incredible resources that I might point out that while the federal resources are phenomenal, and you've heard us talk about how they're transformative in giving us an opportunity to address any number of huge societal issues. But the state resources are frankly incredible in their own right. This isn't just about leadership. We have a responsibility to do it all. Because if you don't do it all, you know, we're just taking small bites. This is a situation where I'm going to reverse, right, that we can eat the whole elephant. And I'm expecting the legislature to do all of that, and quite frankly, they don't need my expectation. They're here today. They're fighting these fights and always have been. And now they've got every tool and every branch of government all standing together. That is a critical difference in my view. Yes.
Governor, thanks for taking our questions. I'd like to ask a quick question about related to COVID since we have you here. Today, President Biden announced that he'll be deploying 6 teams of military medical personnel to 6 states, including New Mexico, to help with hospitals that are overwhelmed, understaffed. Can you tell us what you know about the plan, how that'll affect hospitals here in New Mexico, and if you think this will help?
It will absolutely help. Those resources from the federal government are directed to the University of New Mexico. Primarily, they have the most number of personnel, beds, and with the level 1 trauma, you've got to stabilize the personnel resources there. I mean, we move people from every other part of the state related to the COVID surge and the need for additional hospitalizations. If you need ICU and ventilator support, the reality is we got to get you to one of those supported, resourced hospital beds in Albuquerque, by and large. I want to be careful. Christus can do that too. But the number of those are here. And the one that's got the most opportunity but gets minimized if we don't have enough personnel is certainly the University of New Mexico, which means, and we've been moving folks. You know, we brought in 200 nurses, so we were able to open up Loveless. We're going to keep doing that. And the president's effort here is in response to a call from governors and a call even yesterday with Democratic governors that we need more resources and personnel, and they've got to do it. I might also thank President Biden for the FEMA teams and our mobile vaccination vans that are moving around the state. They're really helping us with schools and veterans and at-risk populations, critical to get shots in arms, and we're going to keep doing that. I think my message to New Mexicans is, and again, you know, as we collect data, we have more information to provide. And I know that's frustrating because you know what? I want to know what every day is going to look like from today for the rest of my life. And in a novel virus, that's not a reality. We have to get data as we get it. But if this CDC and if what we know, which is not quite comparable from Africa and the UK, Israel and other countries, if we're in a situation where we have 6 weeks before we start to see some reasonable either stabilization or declines, we need to brace ourselves, that's one, and having these resources at the hospitals is critical. That's why we also changed the guidance for schools. And 2, I need New Mexicans to double down, triple down, quadruple down your efforts. If you're in a position to cancel an event, a large event, particularly an indoor event, cancel it, postpone it, postpone. Even outdoor events. You all are incredibly safe, not a requirement, but it is an added layer of safety that makes a difference. You know, when people often ask me, I didn't take off my mask to speak, and I know it's harder to hear me and get the full meaning, but I'm in a car with the very men and women who are sworn to protect me, and I have an obligation to protect them too. And I do everything in my power to minimize any ability to transmit COVID. So I just do everything I can. I'm going to ask every New Mexican, you need to do everything you can. If you haven't gotten a booster and you're within that 6-month window, please get a booster. It's showing it's the most effective. So I appreciate the question, and it's a nice way to give a shout out. What works when all branches of government are clear that this is a shared issue we have to address together. And I think that even more might be coming. Don't know that yet, but I think it's possible.
Governor, on the National Guard question.
And then I'll go over here. One more.
Have you asked, has the PED asked the National Guard for bodies to put in schools?
Oh, you are stealing my thunder. I want to know who is talking about our next big press announcement. I'm going to look at Maddie. Maddie, we have a number of ideas. I'm going to ask you to be, a poquito patient. But the data is clear about, frankly, kids are safer in school. So we can have a debate. I'm happy to do that at another time about education and learning and what we're doing. But we have a proposal that I don't think exists anywhere in the nation about what we can do about getting bodies who productively and safely can support our schools to stay open. And we've already been in communication with Santa Fe Public Schools. We think that we can bolster them. Albuquerque Public Schools a little tougher, and I know that the debate got very narrow. You can't take attendance. Look, that's not the issue. If you can't keep a kid safe because we don't have security systems and our fire alarms aren't going to go off, we're not putting kids in an unsafe building. You just can't do it. So I certainly don't disagree that keeping kids safe is the threshold by which we make a decision. But we are all working diligently to get them back on safely online, if you will, as possible. But we'll make sure that you're invited to our announcement that could come shortly. I'm looking at my team. Will come shortly, and we will have specific things to say about the Guard. One more.
Governor, I have a quick question. Yeah. I have a couple question also.
So follow up to what we were saying, can you tell us where the resources are going and what specific resources that are going to help the state and what kind of help do the hospitals in New Mexico?
Well, they need bodies. I mean, here's what's happening, right? So you're short law enforcement officers before today, before 2019, right? They're retiring. We're not recruiting effectively because we don't respect and pay and do the things, provide the tools that we need. It's social workers, educators, nurses, doctors, public safety officers. It's all of the things that we know you have to have. So we need bodies in these hospitals. We just don't have enough. And with this surge, in addition to their exhaustion and the fact that we have short supplies of personnel, it is also that they have COVID. And so with this huge surge, we have personnel that are quarantined or isolated at home. Now, healthcare workers in full PPE, a fitted respiratory N95, can, under our current public health order, provide care in a hospital, but with supervision about PPE, caring for COVID patients. So we're doing everything we can to leverage, but same issue. If you don't have the x-ray tech, and if you don't have folks answering the phones, and you don't have security, and you don't have enough nurses for a shift, we can't do it. So we're already in crisis standards of care. This is bodies. This is nurses. This is hospital workers. These are pharmacists. It's all the folks that we're going to need. And I'm hoping that they're able to identify more. I can't tell you exactly the number because I didn't get it yet after the announcement this morning. I'm sure we might even have it now. I don't have it standing here in front of this podium. Oh, they've got it. How many? 25. Somebody's got it, so thank you. 25, and frankly, to really shore folks up, we need probably 100 there, but 25 is a pretty productive step in the right direction. And we're also asking, for additional federal resources. We also announced we got 400,000 testing kits here. We're expecting today, tomorrow, another 600,000. We've pre-ordered another 1 million. I know you've heard the White House talk about getting them, or at least the Senate in everyone's house. It's a little trickier because you got to do them all the time, but we're on it. We want this administration to supply New Mexico with the resources we need to keep our efforts up as we work diligently to address this recent surge. One more question about.
Governor, you're very obviously, and you have been for a very long time, passionate about fighting the pandemic, but we haven't seen you at these weekly briefings. Do you want to explain why that is?
Well, a couple of things. I was really there when we were announcing very specific strategies and defending those strategies in our public health orders. The public health orders largely today are designed at giving notice about vaccines and about how we are supporting with the data our healthcare partners. In that regard, no one better than Dr. Scrace and his team, who are doing that work directly through both the modeling effort and the medical advisory team. Make no mistake, I deal and am engaged about COVID every single day, 7 days a week. I had a 2.5-hour COVID meeting yesterday with the majority of the cabinet. We're going to develop and announce, so you'll probably see me there, a 6-week plan. So you know exactly what we're doing each week and how we'll evaluate our successes and challenges in that context. And just as an example, and I really want to focus on crime, I have other things to do, and I can do it all. I have, I will. We're going to govern, making sure that every opportunity and every challenge that we are directly facing, engaging, and doing something about it. But here's the kind of thing I do with my cabinet. What are your positivity rates in your stakeholder groups? What are you doing about it? What new policies do you have? Who's gotten boosted? How close are you in closing these gaps? How are you reporting? Change the data. I asked for that, so I guess this could be why none of these guys want to work on the COVID team. I asked for that data, Maddie, Nora, every day, at least once, and sometimes more often. It is an all of the above government approach. And I want to thank you all for doing what you can to keep New Mexicans safe. But that's the only issue, right? It's more focused on what the data is showing, the trends, what we're doing about hospitals, asking people to please take this seriously and get your boosters. And then my job is to bring resources in this context to the state. And I was able to informally tell you, if you have the opportunity, New Mexico, don't go to large indoor events. They're not, just voluntarily. We can all do better at preventing the spread of Omicron. We can, and we should, and we must. All right, thank you all so very much. Let's get going. New Mexico is ready to tackle crime. All right. Thank you. All right.